Hey guys, Gotham Geek Girl here. I'm so excited for today's episode. Welcome to an exciting episode of my new podcast segment, Tea with Triple G. I want to get into debates and hot takes and like unpopular opinions and things that people don't really like to talk about in public. So today I have two very special guests. I'm joined by my friends, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett and Danny O'Neill, aka Blu-ray Dan. You guys have crazy collections. I'm so excited to get into this. We're going to be talking about physical media and how it's really important nowadays with like streaming services. They're getting kind of out of hand, cutting titles, and we're going to talk about adaptations and viewpoints. And are gatekeepers toxic or are they right? We'll kind of get into that a little bit. Is it justified? So first, I want to introduce you to our fabulous guest, imagination concierge, filmmaker, producer, writer, list goes on, director, geek pundit. You do it all. You worked on Star Trek as like a consultant. You are like the go-to guy for anything Star Trek. You also are proclaimed the gatekeeper of geekdom, so that's going to be fun to get into. And you began your professional career as a critic at large. You were part of sci-fi magazines, and you even just said, like, you talked about doing special features for Disney. So you have a crazy resume, and we're gonna have so much fun today. And then Blu-ray Danny, you have a collection of over 5,000 DVDs. I can't. That's insane. And you're a movie critic. You love to talk about movie topics and like your health and like just being a part of this social media. Like, I'm happy that we got to meet and become friends. Yeah, so we're gonna delve right into it. So, Rob, you wanna tell us a little bit about your day and what's going on, what you're working on?
Well, I did a John Campea show this morning. We did,
Hey, Dan.
but yeah, I'm working on another low budget feature called White Devils, and we're doing a second unit shoot this weekend that I was just doing some work to prepare for, where I am going to be we're shooting some close up gore effects. So I'm standing in for the actor, and I'm going to be whipped with what's called a shambach, which is it's a rhinoceros whip from Africa. And because it's rhinoceros hide, I mean, in the movie it's rhinoceros hide, not in real life, but it's got like hooks in it. So it's particularly devastating to be whipped by this thing. And I'll be chained up and they'll be whipping me. And Vincent Gaustini, who worked on things like Kevin Smith's Dogma, he made the wings in Dogma. We're doing it at his facility. So that's what I'm doing this weekend for the Labor Day holiday, which is fun. Yeah, it'll be fun. And then of course, we do our weekly physical media show. Let's Get Physical Media. Although I think I'm gonna have to push it a day because it's Sunday. But I've been getting a lot of titles this week. I don't know, a lot of great stuff. There's so much good stuff. We're living through a renaissance of physical media and things like 4K and the collector's market. And it's really a joy to be alive now, especially if you're a physical media collector. I mean, it's hard on the pocketbook, but it's pretty great. So
And
yeah, that's this week.
oh yeah. And Dan, you have over 5K pieces. You want to talk to us about your collection?
Forget it. Yeah, I think it's more towards the 7,000 to 8,000
Oh my God.
area now. It has grown significantly over the last few years. Yeah, I mean, I originally went to school for film and acting, and just movies inspired me. And I was always a big supporter of physical media. It started off with VHS to DVD, and somewhere along the line we transitioned to Blu-rays and 4Ks, and it has exploded. I'm a huge physical media fan, advocate, big supporter of the whole entire that whole entire category. And I think that physical media is really important.
Yeah, I
And
do too.
I guess let's kind of just jump right into it, because I feel like nowadays physical media is kind of making, like you said, like a renaissance, but I feel like it's like kind of something where people need to kind of realize like it's something we need to, I guess, savor, because more and more, like, I don't know, like streaming services are like coming about and disappearing, and then you're hearing of titles like being taken down. I remember
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the director's name, but one director said his film was completely taken off. I think it was Disney. It was like during the still there were strikes going on, but he mentioned something about like his piece being gone. Like, I don't think anyone has access to it now. So
Wow.
I just want to, like, I guess kind of get your guys' opinion on how you think streaming services are like positive and negative and what fans should do. Because really, like, even though you pay for it, you don't own it. And even though
100%.
like streaming is like a way for people like to have easy access, like, oh, I want to watch this movie right now, let me just put on HBO. But there's also the downside where if they take it off, like if I can never watch Sopranos again, I will have a heart attack.
Yeah.
Huh. Well,
Yeah. I'm
go
sorry.
ahead,
Go ahead.
man. Well, I think one of the problems with streaming and one of the problems with our modern culture is everything is analytics driven.
Hmm.
And, you know, I've always said to people that I believe that pop culture has a half-life of about 20 years. So, you know, you go to 21 years or 40 years or 60 years, our movies or our music, it cuts in half in terms of how many people watch or listen to it. And that's just because pop culture is of its time. And so what's going to happen as far as streaming services go is they're only going to keep the things on the streaming services that people watch, which makes sense. There's no reason if someone's not watching something, well, then they're not going to, why keep it? Why spend the money and license a title? The problem with that is that our rich cinematic legacy, which goes back to really the beginning of the 20th century, how many people, even people that are movie fanatics, when was the last time somebody went back and watched a silent film? Kino Lorber, which is a great distributor, has been releasing, they've been aggressively releasing silent movies on Blu-ray. And I mean, I don't know how they're making money doing that, but I certainly appreciate that they're putting them out. And that's scary to me. Like, I love sci-fi, horror, and exploitation titles. And those are, I mean, unless you've got one of the top 100 science fiction movies that people will always watch, or horror movies or thrillers or things like that, you go back and you get some obscure things, or you get more like Eastern Bloc science fiction from the 60s or something. It's eventually it's why a streaming service is just not going to have that on there. And a lot of these movies will disappear. And the only way to have these films is on physical media. And I think that's happening now. Even we're seeing even Disney Plus released a series called Crater, which is about these kids on the moon. It was something I was going to get around to. They put it on the service in May. It's already taken off.
Wow.
And I think that's, and you know, this isn't a criticism to the audience, because pop culture is, as I said, of the time, but how many people, even film fans, even fans of comic book movies, I know so many fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that have never watched Superman the movie from 1978. And I understand it's hard enough to keep up with the output of films today. If you say to people, yeah, have you watched George Reeves' Adventures of Superman series from the 50s, which I grew up watching, people are like, wait, there was a Superman TV series in the 50s? Yeah, and it's really good. And so it's the kind of thing where, you know, is that going to survive the next 50 years?
Yeah.
So
I agree. And it's worrisome. It's worrisome to me. A lot of stuff will be lost. And going on to what you were saying, it's there's a huge convenience factor that a lot of people are just like you said, oh, let's just kick back and turn on HBO, turn on Netflix, something really, really quick, so you don't have to get up and look for a movie and put a disc in the machine. And yeah, I get the convenience. And listen, I'm guilty of doing it too. I still do it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just don't want to get up.
I'll
But
have it on Blu-ray and watch it on TV.
yes,
yeah,
I've been guilty. I'll look at it right from the couch and I'm like, it's right there, but this is right in my hand right now. Yeah, and I get it. I totally get it. Like I said, I'm guilty of it too, but it is true. And yeah, I've watched so many of my favorites just instantly. Everybody's like, oh, I got Netflix. You know, I think Spider-Man was just taken off not that long ago, or Ninja Turtles, and it's like these are favorites of mine. Like if I go on, how about The Office? You know, The Office was taken off of Netflix. I think it was like one of the #1 watch Netflix shows, and then it was taken off of Netflix and put on, I believe it was NBC, what is it, a Peacock? And yeah, it's just, and then what? Then you got to subscribe to another channel, you know, and or another streaming service. And where does it end? It doesn't end. And that's where I think the physical media is so important. I mean, you have it right here. It's right here. It's in your hand, and you get to look at the artwork that somebody, you know, worked hard on. And if it's a premium edition, you got beautiful, you know,
is that the
beautiful
A24 premium edition that you just held up?
This is not an it's not an A24 premium. It is an A24 film. This is Minari.
Yeah.
And this is I forget what this is from. I forget what company put this out, but yeah, it's a steelbook and it comes with a nice booklet and everything inside, and it's gorgeous and it's stunning.
Yeah.
But then okay, so how many streaming services put up special features as well?
None.
A lot of times you get the movie and then it ends, and then do you want to skip the credits? No, I want to see the special features. I want to see the making of, the ins and outs, the deep dives, and I love stuff like that. And it's something that you don't get with the streaming services. And then, like you said, aside from just taking it off, the editing of it, because wasn't the French Connection? It was just such a really, was it the French Connection? I think it was, right. It was
Yeah.
such a big thing because they were eliminating or cutting out like 20 minutes of the movie or something like that, or something from what I heard.
Yeah, it was a section, but it was some offensive language.
Mm.
And no one can really, I mean, William Friedkin, people are saying it was his cut. I can't believe he would cut this sequence. And it was,
Yeah.
it was the French Connection's about a racist cop.
Yeah.
And he uses racist language. And as our culture, I mean, there's a really weird impulse, I think. I understand that the younger generation believes in being nice to everybody and we have to be tolerant. And I'm all for that. But that doesn't mean you can go back and scrub the past of anything. Yeah, human history is one big, horrible, offensive, awful, ongoing. We've been terrible to each other.
It's also how you learn from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly,
and you're like, I shouldn't be like
that. Yeah, exactly. And if it doesn't exist, then where do you go from there? So yeah, I think it's you have to see where it was, where you were during that time, or where everybody else was during that time, and how people grew from it, instead of just, like you said, scrubbing it clean. I agree.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about having, I mean, we now live in an age where, like, I've been collecting physical media for 43 years now.
Yeah.
And I started working in 1980. I bought my first VHS tape, which was John Carpenter's Halloween.
Ooh.
And back then we had NTSC video. Our video standard was 640 by 480 pixels, which is garbage. and then Blu-ray is basically 6 times better than that. Yeah. And 4K is 4 times better than our Blu-rays. So we finally now have reached a point 43 years later where a 4K disc, a properly transferred 4K disc, is basically the equivalent of the theatrical experience. And if you want to have a big projector in your home and you want to spend some real money, you can basically recreate the theatrical experience at home. And that was like the promise of home video 43 years ago. So I've sort of lived through the whole evolution of it. And now with 4K, which is sort of where it'll be the last physical media format, but it's also the greatest physical media format. And now you've got people going back, especially the boutique labels, and they're making sure that we're getting the best versions of these movies that will ever exist as far as home entertainment is concerned. And unfortunately, so many movies won't get that treatment because they look at catalog titles. I mean, it's unfortunate. Warner Brothers and Disney are both having their 100th anniversary this year.
Yeah.
And if I was the head of Warner Brothers, I know they're trying to cost cut and stop their stock price from plunging and their money from hemorrhaging, but I would have had a new Warner Brothers catalog title come out in 4K every week, because that 4K title will then be put on their streaming services. It'll be licensed out. And that's how things are going to go. It still costs a great deal of money to do a proper 4K transfer, but so the 100th anniversary of Warner Brothers, we got Enter the Dragon in 4K. Now, that's not to be poo-pooed, that's fine, but Warner Brothers has this incredibly deep catalog of both MGM and Warner Brothers movies that we don't have in 4K. And they have not done really anything aggressive to put out their main catalog. And the reason for that is the people that work at Warner Brothers now, they don't even know their own catalog. Because the studios will hire people. Well, they worked in marketing for Coca-Cola. Let's bring them over to Warner Brothers. And I'm like, what do you know about film? And what they do is they read analytics, and they're like, the analytics don't tell those people what their audience. They don't understand that you put out anything in 4K that's science fiction, fantasy, and horror, it's going to sell. Like, where's the 4K of Excalibur? Yeah. The people at Warner Brothers they're like, what's that? The 1981 Arthurian movie that was directed by John Borman that everyone loves, put that out. The people at Warner Brothers don't know what that is. Yeah. So we don't get it. And
it's a numbers game. It's always a numbers game.
Totally. And if they put that out in 4K for their 100th anniversary, it would sell like hotcakes. Every person who's an aficionado, because 4K is an aficionado's market. And everybody buying 4K because you have to have a 4K TV, you have to have a 4K player, and to really enjoy yourself, you have to have a decent sound system, whether it's Dolby Atmos and however many speakers you're running or dual subs or whatever. So the people will buy those discs. And if you look at 4K catalog titles, always go up to the top sellers of the 4K charts.
Yeah.
And it's, and we're being underserved. But then again, they have to decide, what are we going to spend the money on?
Yeah, I agree.
It's crazy. Like years ago, I made the joke that we should probably go back to cable because there's so many apps now. It's getting ridiculous. And then they're all like fighting with each other to take over each other and to get like access to something where it's like, if there's only one thing on this streaming service, I don't want to get it. And then supposedly today, they released that, I was going to say HBO Max, but that Max is going to have CNN commercials or something now. I don't know if there's any merit to that, but I read that today and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is ridiculous.
Well, yeah, it's crazy. Well, that's why Netflix was the powerhouse when they first came out, because they had everything. They had everything from every studio. It was a combination of everything, and nobody could match it. And until somebody was like, you know what?
Make our own.
Why should they be running ours? Why should they, like I said, The Office before, why should they have The Office? That's ours. That's the #1 show on Netflix right now. Well, let's just make our own. You know what I mean? And now it's just everywhere. If you want everything that you want, you have to have every service unless you have physical media. And then you have it all to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's, when Netflix, because the studios, what's really interesting, what I've seen, because I'm so old, the studios didn't even know, like television shows, they didn't realize that old TV shows would be a source of revenue that people, like when I was growing up, you never thought of a TV series by how many seasons it ran. Some people didn't even know. And because they realized during the DVD era, I mean, there were a few shows that got released on VHS, like The Twilight Zone and Star Trek, and you could find other shows, but it wasn't a lot. But it wasn't until the DVD era where they couldn't get stuff out fast enough because DVDs were cheap, special features, people bought them, and you would get your entire whatever your favorite show was, they would put it out, and those shows sold really, really, really well. And then what Netflix did was they sort of followed up on that. Well, they'd put an entire series on their streaming service, and like in 2019, Netflix famously paid $100 million just to license Friends for one more year because it was one of the most watched shows. Nobody even knew. Right now, they're running Suits, the TV series Suits, and Suits went off the air 4 years ago, and now they put it on Netflix, and the people that never saw Suits because they didn't have USA or they didn't even know it was there, it's getting billions of minutes or something, billions of hours or however, whatever is billions of something, and people are watching it, and suddenly this TV show that was basically, it was into syndication and was kind of dead, now has a whole second life on streaming. And that's why some of the writers who are on strike like, well, wait a minute, where are my residuals? But the residuals model doesn't work for Netflix because they're paying for the show. They're not getting any revenue back in. They're hoping to get maybe, but how many people are actually signing up for Suits? Like Netflix their only revenue, I mean, they're going to have ad-based tiers soon, but their only revenue comes from subscriptions. And when they pay money to have a show like Suits, which is, I think, 9 seasons and it's all done, the people that have Netflix suddenly have, even though it's an old TV series to some people, for Netflix subscribers, it's brand new. So everybody binges all of Suits, and now suddenly it's got billions of hours, and the writers of these shows are asking, well, where's my cut? And the answer is, well, you already got your cut. It already, you worked on, there was a writer who worked on the show for 8 years and got his residuals and got his money, and he's done. But then they put it on Netflix, and suddenly 1 billion hours of views, and people are watching it, and the writers want to know, well, where's my cut of that? And Netflix is like, well, we're not obligated to give you anything. We paid a licensing fee to Universal that owns the show. So go to Universal and get their licensing fee from them. But really, the fact that a TV show then suddenly has brand new value, even though it's almost a 20-year-old show, the writers want to get more money from that. But then where'd that money come from? It's not like it's ad-based. They don't get revenue from the ads.
Yeah.
And Netflix, the only revenue they get is from their streaming service. So the question is, did anybody sign up to Netflix to watch Suits? Or is it people that are already paying their subscriptions?
Yeah.
And if no one's signing up to watch Suits, then Suits literally has no monetary value for Netflix. People are watching it, but Netflix isn't making any money on it. As a matter of fact, they paid Universal to run it. So they're keeping their subscriptions. They're not making a profit on it. But the fact that they're keeping their subscriptions is what Netflix is doing. And if something isn't watched, they'll get rid of it.
Yeah.
And then it disappears.
And that's the scary thing, because say like some things that didn't necessarily do well like at the box office became like underground hits. Like Scott Pilgrim is like a perfect example. It did terrible, and it's like a huge fan favorite now. They're even going to make an animated series. So it's like if they don't take chances and they're so quick to get rid of things, there's going to be so much media that gets like lost.
Yeah,
I agree.
And it's crazy. And it's interesting to think like HBO dumped Westworld. They made Westworld and it's no longer on HBO Max. They're selling it. You can buy it on.
Right. That's crazy.
That's scary.
That is wild.
Because it's an expensive show to make, and for them to keep it on the system based on how many people watch it, it's easier for them just to get rid of it and license it to somebody else. They'll make more money that way than keeping it on their own platform, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that is. Even their own stuff. I have Westworld, by the way, seasons 1 through 4, 4K. Got it.
I might have to borrow that.
You got it. You can let me know.
I didn't watch the last season.
Well, you can now if you wanted to. So that's the problem. It's true.
So scary.
Yeah, it's true. Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts. And I think that's the importance of physical media. And also for me, there's so many. The great thing about the boutique companies, we have a huge explosion in Asian cinema.
Mm-hmm.
You have everybody from Arrow and 88 Films and 101 Films, and there's all these boutique labels that are delving into the Asian cinema libraries of going all the way back into the 60s and 70s, which is incredible. And there's a lot of films we never had access to in the West that are now coming out in the best versions possible. And like I just got what is it, Memories of Romance, which I haven't even seen, that which came from Radiance, which is an offshoot of Arrow, which is a UK label that's great.
Yes.
And it's amazing that we're getting all this stuff now, and it's like an embarrassment of riches. And it's preserving our cinematic legacy, because somebody has to go make a great digital file in order to put it on disc.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great.
Yeah, it is.
I love it.
Show me. I'm gonna go grab something real quick, but I want you guys to show or tell, if it's easy to grab, what's like some of your favorite like collector pieces.
Ooh, okay. I got a good one right here, actually,
that
I just got. Let's see if we can get this off. Love this.
Oh yeah.
The Nova Media lenticular of Everything Everywhere All at Once. Oh,
look at that.
Oh my goodness.
That's beautiful.
Oh man. I had to get my hands on this one. This right here. I'll wait for you to get back. Let me know when you're here. So this is this just got released by Nova Media. This is the Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Beautiful.
It is the lenticular edition, and it comes with a steelbook, but I haven't opened it up yet. I'm deciding whether I want to or not, but it is stunning. And if you turn it each way, if you turn it this way, like you can see a different version from each of the characters, the main character's point of view.
Oh yeah.
So awesome.
Epic.
It's really, really nice. I had a hard time getting my hands on this one, where I got my hopes up. Someone's like, I have it for you. And I was like, well, let me know. And then that went through, and then somebody else, and then that went through, and then someone else. And finally they're like, hey, no, we have it. And I said, please just take whatever you want. Just give me this damn release already at this point.
and they're a Hong Kong company, right?
Nova Media is, yes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, they put out, that's another thing as collectors, there's the Koreans, the Japanese, like for instance, what did I do with it? Oh, I just got Guardians of the Galaxy, but this is the Japanese Guardians of the Galaxy that it's the only way to get the 3D version. of Guardians.
Interesting.
And the great thing about the 3D Guardians is they really played with things come out and over the top of the screen and stuff.
Very nice, very nice.
And you can't get, like, I'm still buying whenever I can get a 3D disc, I'm still buy. It has all the other versions too, the 4K, but the only way you can get 3D or this 3D disc is in Japan.
Yeah.
So I think this disc was $80 or something.
Wow. Yeah.
So, but it's the only way to get it.
And that's crazy. That's crazy. And what do you have? You have a obviously you have a 3D TV.
Yeah, I have a 65-inch plasma that I'm still running, a Panasonic plasma that basically, it still has 3D. You can get projectors. I mean, I would love to build a proper home theater with a projector system. Projectors still have 3D, but you can't get like Dolby Vision on projectors yet.
Yeah,
I mean, some do, but they're really, really high end. But yeah, I mean, and that's a friend of mine like got this. This is still, I just got this too, but a lenticular cover. This is the 4K of Jaws 2.
Ooh.
And I'm a huge Jaws 2 fan, but like that, Everything Everywhere, you've got the Steelbook, which has, different art. Where I love Jaws 2 as far as sequels go.
I've actually never seen Jaws 2. I've only seen the first. I've never seen any of the sequels.
Oh, don't ever. This is the only sequel worth watching. But it's got lobby cards and posters and stuff in it, and I'll get. I was in the 5th grade when that came out, and I was really excited for it. So, I mean, you have to get it. And you have to.
Yeah.
Oh, I was to say you search around the world for whatever the best version is of the movie that you want.
Of course. I was gonna say I just recently saw Jaws on the big screen for the first time. I went to LA with my girlfriend for the first time. I'd never been to California before. We went there and we watched Jaws in a small little boat on the water at nighttime, watching it.
Oh,
It was really what a cool experience it was.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, and pretty creepy at the same time.
I'm going to show my
great.
Batman. It's the complete animated series edition, and it comes with figures. Rest in peace, Arlene and Kevin. But yeah, I thought this was really cool. And then this is probably like my most favorite. It's the DC Universe 10th anniversary box collection.
Nice.
And it has all the DVDs, and it's like beautiful. So it's like art.
Oh yeah, that's
like
a gorgeous. Yeah.
Really
like
nice.
All the movies. So I'm like obsessed with this. This is probably like
that's so cool. That's
really cool.
The Smallville. I don't know if you can see it. 20th anniversary.
The big Blu-ray set. Yeah, I want to get that. I was obsessed with that show back in the day.
Oh, and I got the Ong Bak trilogy.
Oh, nice.
Awesome. I got to get that. I've never seen those movies. I'm always getting asked about it too.
Good.
Oh, they are. Yes, but I love the first one especially.
Love Tony Jaa.
Yeah.
So I'm on.
Oh yeah.
So let me see. How do I get to the screen? Both of you. Yes, mega A24 fan. And like the editions that I get are so nice. But I got this. They have a documentary for Amy Winehouse called Amy. And I got this. This is also, I think this is also Nova Media. If you look at how amazing this is.
Wow, that's so cool.
I mean, I saw this. This was cheap too. It was like $30-something, I think, maybe $40 shipped. And it's gorgeous. And then I forget where this one is from, but A Ghost Story is my favorite A24 movie. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that one.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a favorite. There's something about it that just like changed the way I look at life. And I got this one as well. Just so nice.
Is it 3D?
Yeah, that's really, that's gorgeous.
That's sick.
Oh my God. I love it. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. Let's go.
Those are great. And A24 has been doing really good, their own, when they do their collector's editions.
Yes. I have,
and their books are really good
right now. Very professional.
I heard that they're going to do, so Umbrella's doing Talk to Me that comes with the hand. Yeah. And then you can draw on the hand. It comes with a paint pen, so everybody can like comes to your house. But I heard that A24 is going to do one too, and the hand that it comes with is a replica of the one from the movie. Yeah.
I don't know if I want that in my house. So.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't either, but I think I'd prefer that one also.
Yeah.
I have that one on the Umbrella Entertainment one pre-ordered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I'm
cool.
sorry. We can go ahead now. I got
No,
giddy. I
it's
was
all
like, oh my
good.
God, let me get some other stuff.
That's an awesome collector piece.
Thank you. Thank you.
So next I want to get into the juicy part, adaptations. For me, I feel like things don't always have to be like a direct adaptation. I kind of feel like at least they should have like some sort of like respect to the and like a connection to the like original characters and original like creators and source materials, like original vision. Because sometimes things gear off a little too far. But there's a lot of backlash for fans of original source material, and sometimes they can be seen as like toxic gatekeepers. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about both sides, and I love to get your guys' take on it. Um, Rob, you want to start? Gatekeeper of geekdom?
Well, I mean, I think, what's really interesting is obviously if something is being translated that is already beloved, whether it's Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or take your pick, like something, The Hunger Games, that started out as if there's an already built-in audience and you've spent the money to acquire a property, your audience that you're making it for has an expectation that you're going to try and do the most faithful adaptation that you can, and like I think about one of my favorite adaptations. Like, I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and Different Seasons, which came out in 1982, had 4 stories in it, and 3 of them have been made into movies. The Body was made into Stand By Me by Rob Reiner. Apt Pupil was made by Bryan Singer. And then Frank Darabont made the story Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption into The Shawshank Redemption, which I think is not only one of maybe the greatest Stephen King adaptation, but it's just a great movie. And I love that novella. But I think it's a great adaptation of that story. And what's really interesting is in the original book, in the original story, the character of Red is a white Irish dude. And Frank Darabont made the choice to go with Morgan Freeman. So there's a lot of talk nowadays about, race swapping or whatever. But I would say, I don't think anyone in the world would ever watch The Shawshank Redemption and think to themselves that Morgan Freeman shouldn't be playing that part.
Yeah.
I mean, you love him. And so his character, you're seeing the movie through his eyes because he's the one doing the voiceover, the narration. And that was a change from the original story that really doesn't make any difference at all. It doesn't matter. But that is I think to me is a perfect example of an adaptation that it allows some leeway. The director, Frank Darabont, went and cast an actor that maybe might not have been the first person you thought of, but it was a perfect choice. And to me, that's what adaptation's all about. Because a movie isn't a book, and I would think about, there are movies that I think that the books are not as good as the film. Jaws, I was showing Jaws 2 earlier. The book of Jaws has Matt Hooper, Richard Dreyfuss's character, having an affair with Sheriff Brody's wife. Now, there's no place for that in the movie.
Yeah.
And it sort of distracts from the story. So, and yet Steven Spielberg, young in his career, showed so much verve in filmmaking, virtuosity in that film. No one's going to sit there and be like, I really missed the affair between Matt Hooper and Ellen Brody. No one's ever going to think
it. I would have loved that movie if that was. No,
I know, right? I mean, she's like 12 years older than he is. And I think that it really comes down to, do you capture the spirit of the story?
Yeah.
And to me, those are the best adaptations, when you have somebody that loves the source material but is also a deft storyteller that knows where you can change things and move things around and make things different, but still retain the essence of what the story is.
Yeah, and I agree. You said it really well. It's just there's got to be a respect to the source material. Yeah, definitely. Like you said, certain details can be changed. You could adjust things to the times. I fully agree with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But yeah, I mean, there's got to be some respect. You have to go back to the original source material in some sense, because then I mean, what else are you using? Like, why are you taking the name Why are you
Right.
telling people, getting somebody so excited for this, and then it's a total opposite. It's like a spit in the face, and something that people could be looking forward to for years and years now is just so disappointed, and then it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. I totally agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
For me, a perfect example is The Last of Us. I think the show was absolutely phenomenal because like it added context to the
Hmm.
story.
Yeah.
Being that it's a video game, yes, it's probably one of the best like narrative video games because there was a lot of story to pull from. But I think the show did a phenomenal job of like making you care about even the side characters. Like episode 3, with I'm blanking on his name right now. But
Nick Offerman.
yes, Nick
Yeah.
Offerman. That episode was phenomenal. It was beautiful. It made me care about his character. And
Hmm.
a lot of people were complaining like, "Oh, this wasn't in the game." But when it comes down to it, it was the game like T for T. Like so many moments from the game, maybe they like changed, like tweak things or took a couple things out. But we can't be there for 3 hours watching you climb, watching you
Yeah.
hide, watching you load weapon. Like that's not necessary. So I think The Last of Us did like a beautiful job of making something better.
Yeah,
I,
I
I
agree.
yeah, I think you're right too. And a great adaptation, like I love the fact that they added information about the cordyceps. Like the cordyceps, if you were a half mile away, but you disturbed that they could know that there was motion, and they would send creatures to find out what that was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they added to the mythology that wasn't a part of the game. And a video game is based around the idea that you're playing it. So the narrative is, you're watching the narrative and the cut scenes. But what the episode 3 also did was it showed the fall of civilization, but through the story of these two men. So it added context to the entire world. And like, okay, not everybody's going to be these two guys. People are going to have a different experience of the end of the world, but it showed what we'd lost. And it showed like, here are two guys that are trying to hang on to a semblance of reality and a
Yeah.
semblance of normality in this town. And even that was ultimately futile. I mean, you're going to grow old and you're not going to be able to live forever. And it was a beautiful story that might not have been in the game, but it added to The Last of Us. I think it added to the game, because when you play the game again, you're going to think about that story. Those characters are there. It's just we didn't see them in that particular context. And I think it added to the whole. I mean, I can't wait to see what's going to happen when they adapt.
Oh God.
What's gonna?
People
I
are
mean,
in for it.
I mean, people are really in for it, and it's like the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. It's, I mean, because a lot of people that I would venture a guess that not maybe a lot, but I would say a great majority of the people that watch that show have never played the game.
Yeah.
Older adults, they didn't play that game. And so they're experiencing the story and like, oh my God, I love these characters so much. I can't wait to see season 2. I want to have a party and watch it with a bunch of people that have never played the game.
Right? I'm gonna be like
Just be like,
What
yes.
one thing I want to mention about an adaptation is, so have you ever read The Shining?
Yeah.
So now I have never read The Shining, the novel, the book. I have never read The Shining before. My girlfriend has. She's a huge fan. Now, there's a big key difference that she says in the personality of Jack Nicholson, correct? And I think it's my main problem with the movie. I don't have a problem with the movie. Actually, I like the movie a lot. But have you seen the movie, Nadia, The Shining?
yeah,
Have you
of
ever seen The
course.
Shining?
I'm actually about
So,
to see it again because they're having like a Kubrick special at the Alamo.
Oh,
ooh, very
nice.
nice. I saw it at the rooftop cinema last year. It was really, really nice. Um, his personality in the movie, from start to finish, he's a jerk in the movie. He's a jerk completely. And by the end of the movie, he's a bigger jerk. Now, and I was like, there's something about this movie. It's like, I just wish he was nicer in the beginning, more of a caring person, a loving father. And then he transitioned. And my girlfriend was like, in the book, he is nicer in the beginning. And I don't know why that is something that was taken out, because I feel like I would have liked the movie so much better if that happened.
I totally look, I'm a Kubrick fanatic, but
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you. And I think that the change in him, it makes it more horrifying and more tragic that you
Yeah.
have this guy who's more of a family man. I mean, from the beginning of that movie that Jack Nicholson's nuts.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's too.
he's not, and I mean, I still really like the movie a lot, but it might be my least favorite Stanley Kubrick movie because there's not a lot of there. There's not a lot of subtext in his version of The Shining. Like he
Yeah.
wanted to go make a B horror film, and he did. And I think there's a lot to love in The Shining. Like I love the fact that most of it takes place in the light until you get to the end when you're in the frozen maze, but the rest of it, the lights are all on. There's no one in the dark that jumps out at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do,
Oh,
to keep the lights on.
A24's Midsummer did the same.
Yeah.
They succeeded in making a horror movie that it takes place mostly during the day, which is pretty scary. It's like you're always worried about what's coming next. Not all of it's in the day, but a lot of it is in the daylight.
Yeah, and it's disconcerting when you're watching it. That and like let's all of us leave. Every time I watch that movie, I'm like, why don't we all leave now? I'm talking to the screen. I mean, can we leave now? Let's go.
let's get out of here.
After the couple goes off the rock, I'm like, we're out. It's time to go.
I just realized your cup and pillar A24.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can see the A24
too,
pillar
yeah.
that yeah, the cup. Oh, I'm like I said, fanatic. I mean, when Ex Machina first came out, that's the first A24 movie, not to sway topics, but that's the first movie that I had seen from A24 in the theater. And I didn't know it was A24 back then. They were fairly new. I think it was 2015. They started 2014, I believe.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember I saw there was a first. It's funny because there's the day in general is just there were a lot of memorable moments for me. It was the first time that I ever saw a movie by myself. I was just like, you know what, let me go see a movie by myself. And it was the first day that I ever seen a double feature of two films in the theater.
Wow.
And I saw Chappie over at the Regal Midway in Queens. And I actually really enjoyed Chappie. I think it's underrated, mismarketed, but underrated. And then I was like, you know what? There's another robot movie. Let's go take a look. And I went and saw Ex Machina at the Cinemark and loved it. And I fell in love with it. And I was like, wow, I really like that movie. Came home, saw Green Room or I forget, not that long after. And I was
That's
like, wow,
a great movie too.
it is. And I'm like, it's funny. I had this custom, you're going to, fanatic. I had this custom lenticular steelbook magnet created for if I ever make a custom steelbook for it.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I love that. Like there's so much depth to this thing, the hallway, I love it. And yeah, so I saw that in the theater not long after, and I was like, damn, this is really nice. And then I was like, huh, that logo popped up again. And then I saw a room with Brie Larson and Jacob Tremblay, and then it went on and on. I was like, I really like this, and there was a point up until last year, I think right before X or right before Pearl, that I had seen every single A24 movie. I made it a point, and I think I'm at like 128 of their like 140 something films.
Was Upgrade A24?
Which one?
Upgrade, was that A24?
It was not, but that was a great movie as well.
I think is that Blumhouse?
I think
that's Lee Wanell.
Because that's another one that like went under the
Upgrade was really good.
Epic.
Yeah, it was Lee Wanell made that before, and then he went on to make Invisible Man for Blumhouse.
Yeah,
and it was really. I have is it the Second Sight version of Upgrade? The box set?
Yes, there is an Upgrade of Second Sight films, which I very much wanted, and I never got my hands on. I was just pulling out. I have the Second Sight of The Witch, the A24, The Witch right over here, and this thing is gorgeous.
And that is what's great. I love Second Sight's one of my favorite. Their Dawn of the Dead box set's my favorite piece of physical media ever made. But that version
coming up soon.
Yeah, that version of The Witch, because Robert Eggers was not happy with the home video version of The Witch. He wasn't happy with the color timing. They didn't involve him.
I didn't know that.
When Second Sight got the rights, they brought him in and they made the transfer the way he wanted it. Like right now, Second Sight's been working on The Hitcher, the 80s movie with Rutger Hauer, which has been it's never been released on Blu-ray domestically because they couldn't find the negative. And I love that movie, and it's beautifully shot, widescreen. They're putting that out.
Nice.
There's other companies, the deals they make, they have to let other companies release them first. But I always get whatever Second Sight puts out, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Same with like A24. Everything they put out is great.
Yeah.
I guess when it comes to anime, I kind of want to get into that a little bit when it comes to like the whole adaptation part. Because people can sometimes be kind of like hypocritical because they'll like bash fans of the original source material, but then they'll also say things like, oh, the live action anime, it like deviated too far. And then they'll be like they'll say the DC animated stories were right there. So it's kind of like back and forth, because sometimes they'll say, well, you can just use this, but then when something else deviates, they're like, oh, well, you're just mad because they didn't do what you wanted. So it's kind of like, everyone's fandoms are so crazy. And then
I
it's
think
like,
the live action Dragon Ball Z was a shot for shot perfection of
yeah.
the anime. No, I'm definitely not real with
Yeah,
that.
like, wait, what?
Well, it's hard because anime is such a the style of it, depending on what, it's not just animation. It really depends, and I think it's really hard to like look. I think everybody's got bated breath to see One Piece and what that's going to be like. And I think it's really hard to recreate in anime something in live action.
Mhm.
But it really depends. Like I'm one of my favorite, like one of my dream projects, my favorite anime of all time is something not many people have seen, called Legends of the Galactic Heroes, that's now being remade in Japan. But the original OVA series was 110 episodes, and it's based on these Japanese science fiction novels. It's totally space opera. It's like Lord of the Rings meets World War II in space. And the story is sprawling and epic, but it would lend itself well when you're watching. You think, my God, this would be so cool in live action, because it doesn't use those anime tropes. Like when people are fighting, it's very realistic in its portrayal. So it would be something that serves itself well. But when you're doing something like Dragon Ball Z, once you bring characters into the real world,
Yeah.
the stylization of anime is hard to do. And I'll tell you something I thought was really interesting. So Michael B. Jordan, who directed Creed 3 and stars as Adonis Creed, he's a huge anime fan.
I heard,
And
yeah.
he brought in the fight scenes in that movie.
Yeah.
He brought in a lot of the anime stylings into those fight scenes. And I was like, that's really cool. You could see it. You could see his anime influence.
When
And
he
I
was
thought,
fighting Kang,
yeah,
I just
yeah.
blanked out. But yeah.
And I thought it looked, I mean, it was like when the crowd drifts away and all that, it's pretty stylized, but I thought it really worked, like in those fight scenes when he'd do the close-ups of the hands or the fists hitting the body. And I thought that was cool.
I
And
like the unique style to that. I could fully agree with that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it made me want to see him direct an anime adaptation, because I
That would
think
be cool.
he would get it. If he did a Dragon Ball Z movie or something, he would know how to put the fight scenes and
Yeah.
make them work in
Yeah.
live action.
It's just too bad that Creed 3 wasn't that great. I'm sorry, I'm a mega Rocky fan. It's my favorite movie of all time, and I have such a problem with Creed 3. I have such a
Yeah.
problem with it. It's I don't, I mean, I don't know how much time we have here, but for being such a Rocky fan with that movie, I like his take on it. I like the spin on it. That was definitely cool, unique. You know what I mean? I like the creative freedom, that he had because
Yeah.
he directed it, and but such a lack of heart without Rocky in that movie for me. Being a Rocky fan, everybody knows me. Rocky and A24 are like my it's like my number one things. And there's just so much about the movie that I was like, he should have been in that. He should have been in that. Yo, where am I? It's drives me crazy that he's not in that movie even for a split second. It drives me crazy. Not even a phone call. I can't even. That's a whole other. We could do a whole podcast on that alone.
I guess back to like the source material part, like kind of saying like, I guess part of like what Rob was saying, like it's taking things into a new medium. So it's kind of like a new way of like telling the story and trying to reach new fans and new audiences. And like certain things won't necessarily translate well. So
Right.
like let's say like a show will kind of focus more of a connection of like I guess like backstories and like defining like new characters and relationships and things that necessarily weren't like showcased in like, let's say, the manga or the like book or comic. Like sometimes certain things have to be like expanded upon, and the changes may make more sense to tell the story like in this medium.
Yeah, well, like in Lord of the Rings, the Battle of Helm's Deep that's in the Two Towers is like a page in the book. And in the movie, they use it as a gigantic, enormous set piece. And I think that was a great choice, because when you're making 3 movies, you have to make each movie balanced. And by having this apocalyptic, taking the Battle of Helm's Deep, I mean, it was there, but the book didn't make it into a set piece. But Peter Jackson and Fran and Philippa did when they made the movie. And it was a great way to sort of have this gigantic ending for the film, that really, I mean, it really worked. And then, of course, the Battle of Isengard and the Ents attacking and all that. But that battle made that movie, you know, and it was a battle like we'd never seen before, a medieval siege that we'd never seen before. And we really got to see our 3 characters in Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn. And then, of course, Gandalf saves the day, bringing the Riders of the Rohirrim. So I know Tolkien purists might say, well, yeah, why'd we have to see we don't have Tom Bombadil in the story. And so, but it works. And I think that's where it falls upon the filmmakers to know what the story is that they're telling, and they can retain the spirit of Tolkien, but they're doing something we haven't seen before, that readers haven't seen before, but it still works in the context of the story. And I think that, like, if you're gonna get rid of characters from a comic or a book and not have them in the movie, or make an amalgamation character where you've put 2 or 3 characters from a book or story and turn them into one character, as long as the filmmakers are good at what they're doing, I don't have a problem with that, because they have to make it work. A short story or a novel is not a movie. And when you have to work, it has to be, it has to work as a film first and foremost. And so I think that's where all adaptation, the question is this good for the story as we are telling on film, as opposed to the book? Because reading a book is very, very different than the act of watching a movie. And with
then
books,
there's also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and then also another part I think that has to do with that, it is, or that goes hand in hand with it, is that even if the filmmakers do it the right way, the studios put their hands in the pot. And that's when a lot of times they shift and adjust everything. You know what I mean? They could completely change it. I mean, look at what was it, Justice League, right? Zack Snyder's Justice League. The fact that, well, that wasn't just a studio. That was the other director that came in too. But it's, yeah, a lot of times the studios get their hands in, they're like, no, I want it this way, and you're completely changing the vision of what a filmmaker has. So you know, that can go hand in hand with that, I think, as well.
Yeah, and that's a great example, because the studio and Warner Brothers, they wanted the success of the Avengers without doing the groundwork that Marvel did. I agree.
Fully agree. That's what I always say.
You know, and they didn't have the individual movies, and they tried to jumpstart their thing, and then they balked because Man of Steel and Batman, they thought Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice was going to make $1 billion. Yeah. And they don't know the difference. I mean, it's hard to fathom, but these studio executives, they don't know the fan base, they don't know their audience, and if they see something they like, they'll go, okay, but that's in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So what they did was they stopped believing in their own filmmaker. They didn't believe in Zack Snyder, and they removed him from the project and tried to turn. I mean, the movie was shot, you know, and then they came in like, we're going to redo it. And it's like, based on what? Based on you're making a decision halfway through, and you're going to go based on, because you want it to be like the Avengers. You've made 2 movies with a filmmaker that aren't the Avengers.
Yeah.
And both of those movies, they did well. It's just you spent too much money on them. You know, if Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice didn't cost a lot more money than it should have, it could have made more money, and it almost made $1 billion.
Yeah.
But then you wanted it cut. I mean, and you have studio executives who aren't filmmakers doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Yeah. They're making decisions based.
Yeah.
It's not good.
I'll tell you what would have done well. Man of Steel 2. I think everybody that and just the hype around it alone from the fandom, and the fact that, you know, Henry Cavill is such a huge fan of what that character was, and the hype around, hey guys, I'm back. I'm gonna be Superman again. And then it's like, no, goodbye. You had potential right there. And it, like, what now? And I don't listen, oh my God, I can't think of the guy's name right now. Who's gonna be jumping in now ahead of DC?
James Gunn and Peter Safran are
James
running.
Gunn, and he's great. I think James Gunn is great. I love what he obviously, look at the Guardians movies. He's fantastic, but they're trying to restart while still intertwined with everything that went wrong. I just don't know how good it's. Maybe I don't know. I can't see it holding its own right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole comic book genre right now is unfortunately between DC and Marvel. They've killed it.
Yeah,
I
it's
think comic book
down.
movies are dead. They're dead in the sense that, I mean, Aquaman 2, they spent a whole lot of money. Aquaman was up until Barbie, I believe Aquaman was their highest grossing, Warner Brothers' highest grossing film of all time.
Wow.
Barbie has surpassed it.
Yeah.
And I think Aquaman 2 is coming out, and I think Aquaman 2 will be lucky to make $500 million.
Yeah. I think it's unfortunately, I think it's gonna be a big flop.
Yeah, unless the movies, and I think the reason being is that origin stories, the fact that they're telling a Blue Beetle origin story, or any origin story now, is a mistake, because we already understand so well the superhero origin story. You could jump right in. Like when Marvel made Blade, and when it came out in '98, they didn't do an origin of Blade. They jumped right in there. You're at a vampire rave and Blade shows up and kicks ass, and you didn't have to know, well, here was Blade when he was a young boy, and he was, I mean, you don't have to do that anymore. And the problem is, if you're gonna do that, you're boring your audience, because your audience, a superhero origin story is just a variation on a theme.
Yeah.
And that's why I really think James Gunn, I think he's going to bring a tone to the DC universe that's different. It's going to be sort of classical, but at the same time modern. And he's going to make it's going to feel different right away. And I think that he's going to pull it off. I think he really is.
I have really, look, my fingers are crossed for it, because I mean, listen, he does great work. He really, really does. I'm a big fan. I just, I think you're jumping into something that's so, like, how are you going to intertwine all this stuff that's going on? You were keeping certain characters and not. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I hope you're right. I really do.
Yeah, me too. I hope I am. I mean, I'm looking forward to it.
It's oversaturated. We're oversaturated with superhero stuff. As much as I grew up loving this genre, the superhero genre, and there's just so much of it. And there's almost, that you need time to miss something so that you appreciate it and you love it. You can't, remember going back to Sam Raimi Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, when you'd go years and years without a superhero movie.
Yep.
Now you don't even get a break in between because they're doing all the shows. So it's like, all right, if you want all the content, you want all the context, you want to be up to date on everything, you got to watch all the shows. And there's 3 series in between every movie. It's like, whoa, all right, it's a lot. There's too much.
People have been talking about like comic book fatigue. I kind of think it is kind of real. Like kind of what you just said. Like before, we used to wait like years. Like we had like Spider-Man, we had the Punisher, we had Blade, we had a few years later we had like, Iron Man, X-Men, a few more like underground, but it wasn't like every month you have a new TV show. Like I didn't even watch Groot. I didn't even watch most of the new Star Wars shows. I'm just kind of like, maybe I'll get back to it. Maybe I'll watch it later. But it's like every week there's something out. And it's like, I would never think I would say that. Like growing up reading comics and like seeing a movie for the first time and watching like Batman the Animated Series, like growing up, I would never think I would say the words like I'm tired of it. Yeah. Like certain things like still are great. Like I love The Boys and it completely strays from the comics, but like it works. And I don't know. There's a little too much.
Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. It really is true. I will say though, with that being said, Spider-Man No Way Home and Guardians 3 felt like breath of fresh air a little bit. I really enjoyed both of those very, very much. Even though Spider-Man was more nostalgic than than whatever, but Guardians 3 was, I thought, just phenomenal. And it was like, wow, you know what? I actually enjoyed every moment of that movie.
Really happy with Guardians 3.
Yeah.
Yep,
it was too. Great. Yeah.
And it felt like, what's interesting is that the Guardians trilogy, even if there was no MCU, it would work beautifully.
I agree. It's able to stand on its own.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that he did a great job giving us an ending.
Yeah.
to that trilogy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
one more thing, like back on like I guess like adapting and one thing I don't like is when something like changes a character like to fit a narrative. I feel like that does a disservice because they're kind of like changing a character to make another character. I guess like you guys would call it like jobbing or something. So like I don't like when certain things like will kind of like ruin a character just to make someone else look better.
Yeah.
And I have a problem with that. And then sometimes I feel like having the creator be like a part of it, it can be beneficial to have them on. Because like certain things like they won't overlook. And then what was the did you ever watch like Alice in Borderland? I think that was like a perfect example of like using the source material like very closely, but it also made it work for like an episodic format.
I totally agree.
Not that easy to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I think we live in a time where on one hand, the impulse to whether it's some kind of an agenda or you're trying to be more representative and include more people, I think the idea is a good one, giving more voice to people that haven't had voices. But on the other hand, and I always say, never put your agenda or your universe before your characters and your plot, your story. And I think a lot of the time we're having that now. People's desire to show like, let's try and show how good we are or whatever. If you make the story worse or you compromise the characters as they were conceived, you're not doing anybody any favors. And jobbing somebody or like you said, it doesn't work. And so often we're seeing more and more of that in our entertainment. And it's happening on modern Star Trek. I mean, if you watch Strange New Worlds, and look, the show's full of girl bosses, that's fine. But when you diminish the male characters, then it becomes obvious when you're watching this and you're like, first of all, nobody acts this way. These characters in an environment, a pseudo-military environment, you're talking to each other with no military decorum. There's no sense of a chain of command. I don't believe what I'm watching.
Yeah.
And that's because the people aren't paying attention to the actual story. If something's taking place on a military vessel or a pseudo-military vessel, you have to follow that kind of protocol, and your audience is going to know. If there's no semblance of that at all, you look at it and go, wait a minute, nobody would act this way, and it becomes distracting.
Yeah.
And the same is true if you're doing a superhero show. You can't just change the
Kate
superheroes.
Bishop is not stronger than Kingpin.
Right.
I hated that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%. And that it
shit out of Charlie Cox in the Netflix series and Kate Bishop, like
yeah, and you look at that and you're like, I get what you're trying to do, but it doesn't work. And you've diminished your whole story. So
I agree.
Yeah.
And one more thing, I guess kind of like people kind of have to understand like the difference with like graphic novels and comic books, because comic books are constant and they're always evolving, and there's like different interpretations. So you'll have like a different writer come on and different eras, and like Batman now is not going to be the same as Batman in 1960. So I think that's one thing that people need to understand, that comics are always evolving. So yes, Henry Cavill can be dark and he can also save the world. Like, it's not always just like, Supergirl, I'm here to save the day.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's, I think about graphic novels too that are not superhero based, like Road to Perdition. That was a graphic novel. Blue is the Warmest Color. That was a graphic novel. And with superhero graphic, Watchmen, of course, I mean, that was about superheroes, but again, a graphic novel is just another source material, the same way that a novel is, or a short story, or even Top Gun was based on a magazine article, it was about real people, but you still have to be true to the spirit of whatever it is that you're adapting. And I think that's really the most important thing. And a lot of like, I like different iterations of Batman, like Michael Keaton's Batman or Christian Bale's Batman or Robert Pattinson's Batman. the essence of Batman, as long as you capture that. Batman the animated series probably is maybe the most perfect distillation of Batman, especially the comic book Batman. Batman Mask of the Phantasm is a really good Batman movie, you know, and as long as, and you can see Batman in animation, you can see Batman in live action. The Arkham video games is a really great adaptation of Batman. So
if you haven't played Telltale Batman 2, it's epic.
Oh yeah.
Great story.
So I mean, it's but the spirit of Batman's in all of those things, and it can be, each one can be a little different, but as long as you're true to the spirit.
I agree. Yeah.
Like you can have Pattinson exist in his own universe and still have, like, say, Ben Affleck or whichever new Batman comes on. They're different.
And he, by the way, I forgot to mention, he was great. Like one of my favorite Batman scenes in anything ever.
The ceiling.
Well, no, but just the opening when he's dressed as Bruce Wayne, and he shows up in Metropolis when Zod and Superman are fighting at the beginning of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and he gets in that car and he goes toward the mayhem, you know, and he comes out in his beautiful 3-piece suit and he rescues that girl, and he's trying to get his people out of the Wayne Enterprises building. And even though he's not dressed as Batman, you see Batman on Affleck's face. You know, and that's everything that you need to know about that character. And that's how they introduced him into Zack Snyder's universe. I'm like, that was a way to introduce Batman, not as Batman, but as Bruce Wayne. But even as Bruce Wayne, you see him. And that's what sold me on Affleck as I always loved the idea of him, but it sold me on him as Batman, even though he's dressed as Bruce Wayne. And that final shot where he's with the girl and he's looking up into the sky and the camera's above him, and you realize, oh, this is going down.
Yeah.
You know,
they've all brought their own
guys.
take
Sorry,
to it.
I don't want to cut you. But just tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, Rob.
You can find me on YouTube at The Burnett Work and my show Robservations.
Yes, and me, you could find me on more so on TikTok nowadays, but YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all those good things as Blu-ray Dan, and TikTok right now at Dan in Real Life.
Nice.
Thank you so much, guys. This was so much fun. Gotham Geek Girl here. I had an amazing time. Thank you for joining me. And tune in to T with Triple G and leave a comment. Let us know what you guys think.